The topic today is what is possible with a smart building. And we're really trying to focus on what is actually doable today. Of course, we come from Igor, which is a POE-based company, and with our technology in mind. So this is really what's capable today and what we can do as well. We're going to look at some projects we've done over the last, about the last year. We're highlighting a couple projects that have some interesting aspects. And then we'll also talk about what else could be done in those sort of projects in the future. If they were to do them again today, what else could we be adding to them? Or what else we're seeing in those types of projects today. So Matt, for the most part, Matt will kind of give that overview of what the project is. Dwight's going to add a little bit in terms of what else could be done or we can be doing in those types of projects with what we have today. And certainly, you know, it's really meant to be more of a conversation as we go. So submit your questions as we go. If it makes sense, I'm going to try and insert a few of them if they pertain to that particular case study that we're talking about. And with that, of course, follow us on social media if you haven't already. And then I'd love to turn it over to Matt, who is our Director of Business Development. He has the Southeast US and LATAM, all of Latin America. He also manages our ecosystem. So he has a lot of that knowledge about the different providers that can integrate with us. And then Dwight, of course, is our founder and CTO, and we're excited to have him back to join us for this. So without waiting any longer, let's just kick it off. And Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a little bit of an insight into what Nice Tech was about.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I appreciate it. And everybody, thanks for jumping on with us online today before you kick off your Memorial Day weekend. So thank you. So we're gonna just really this is just a conversation, and we're gonna be looking at key projects or projects that we've completed, and then kind of just some ideas of sharing some of what are done, and then what else we could do with those spaces. So Kim, if you don't mind, can we just take a look at the first slide?
Yeah, can you? Oh, let me resume the sharing. Thank you. Can you see the full screen, or do you have a little?
We have like a
the speaker
no,
view. Got it. Wait, is it good or not? My apologies, everyone.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, awesome. So this is a project in upstate New York, and we completed this I think during 2018, 2019, and the Nice Tech facility there. Nice Tech is a consultant. They do a lot of work with government agencies around the state of New York, and a good friend of ours, Liz Swell, reached out to us and was saying that, hey, you know, this client was starting down the path of going intelligent buildings, and they were working with another manufacturer and ran into a lot of challenges. And so we were able to come in and work with Lewis and Tom Haddad and others on this project to really a beautiful, differentiated aesthetic, you know, led by Erin at QPK and her lighting design, and then to do things like human-centric lighting. So everything, or not every fixture, but the majority of the fixtures in this project are tunable white. And then at the, we also did things like, at the time, this was probably the second or third largest implementation of motorized shades, Power over Ethernet motorized shades at the time. And then beautiful lighting throughout. We worked with partners like LumenWorks, Amerlux, Bode, Axis, and more. And it's just a really exciting thing. So my favorite things there were definitely just a number of the finishes that they picked out and the styling, and it just turned out to be a very high-end, high-profile project for us. So also on there, we're doing things like space utilization using a partner of ours called Avani. Dwight, is there any like cool stuff we could be doing with like Bluetooth on something like this?
Yeah, so with being able to have that Bluetooth capability, one of the things that we're doing is we have a patent that is for tunneling that data. So we can connect up different devices that via our USB or serial bus and tunnel that data all the way back to our gateway and through the APIs. And then we can crunch that information in different ways. And one of those ways is we could take that Bluetooth data and even do asset tracking on it, so that you can better understand the use of different areas. And in particular, if you're just using it for knowing whether or not there's someone in the room by using the Bluetooth signal information, you can better understand your space utilization. And we now have that capability that we can, through our cloud portal, make that data available through a natural database connection to programs that can bind to databases easily, which are pretty much any analytics package can just bind to a database. So for instance, Microsoft Power BI, you could use to be able to better understand. And you, as a company, you're probably already using some sort of analytics package. So now you could use that same analytics package you've been using, connect up to this data, see this data alongside other data that you're, and be able to see interesting correlations that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, right on like the Power BI stuff. So is it where like we host a database in the cloud and that database is supporting like real-time information, and then we're just connecting that database with the Power BI tool at the provider? Is that kind of how that comes together?
Yeah, basically it's uploaded on, I think, an hourly basis. We are moving towards, by the end of this year, we should have it near real time up in the cloud. And then at that point, yeah, it's just a database connection that you can connect any, it could be a web-based tool, it could be a local tool, but we just provide you a database connection string that basically our cloud exports a database that's specific just to you and the sites that you have access to, and then you can connect to it. I mean, it's really pretty simple.
Cool. Some other stuff I noticed at this site that we probably could, or at the time we just weren't ready, but here we are just a few months later, and I saw a number of single-use objects like thermostats. Is there things we could do with combining like thermostat, lighting, and shade control today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very excited about, we just as of a couple of weeks ago have debuted an HVAC integration, and actually without even needing a thermostat, we can integrate directly to a, usually inside of a room like this, there would be some sort of device that's actuating the heat and ventilation, the fan. And so it's a PTAC, it's a VRF, some other device like that. And we can connect directly to that end device and control it. We would typically deploy a touch screen in that room at that point. It would show you the status of the fan and of the mode that it's in, a cooling, heating, auto cycle. And then all of that logic is within Igor. You can see your HVAC operations at that point within the same Igor interface as you do everything else.
Awesome. Kim, do you mind if we go to the next one and take a look at this other project?
Absolutely. I think I had kind of switched that up a little bit. So give me just a moment to switch that over. There we go. We should be good to go for the rest of this. So my apologies on the screen share, everyone.
No, all good. So this is a really cool project in Music Tribe. You heard, if you were on any of the previous webinars, you heard one of the clients or one of the individuals at the client, Jason, speak to some of the installation benefits, how much faster it was to install, how much easier it is to support, how much simpler and the system topologies are. But some of the things we didn't tell you are things like, one, this is a pretty, this is an energy management lighting control solution as far as what we did on this site versus at NiceTech, we did a lot of other more exciting things. So it really shows the range of what you can do with the platform. And one of the things that really got me excited about this Music Tribe project was how we were able to pull in or work with some ecosystem partners, right? So we have this API that allows others to take control and pull data from our systems. Is that kind of true, Dwight?
Yeah, exactly. It's really a centerpiece of our whole solution is that being able to, take an end device, connect it easily onto our node, and now that shows up in the software all the way to the API. So by being able to just connect something quickly, physically, and have it bubble up all the way through the API, as you want to add things to the building or anything, be able to see that in the API very easily and quickly. But the API, typically, when you hear about APIs, it's an application programmer interface, which allows programmers or third parties to develop apps and integrations into the platform. What we take a very cybersecurity centric approach, so that each one of those integrations has its own app key, as it's called, and every time it communicates to the API, it has to use a token that's only used once, that then uses the app key to generate that token. But that allows for, we also have some really great cybersecurity features with our platform now, where we can see abnormalities with traffic, either on the device side or on the integration side. And if we start seeing things that aren't quite right, let's say a lot of traffic that's irregular, or data that's not formulated correctly, that could indicate there's a penetration, that someone's trying to take advantage of the system, those kind of things, then we can quarantine those connections and flag them and allow you to see a list of all the quarantined devices and connections and choose what to do with them as well. So as these buildings get, as Matt, you're talking about, I mean, there's so many different applications and third parties and such a diversity of devices and applications that will be deployed ultimately, that it's really important to have a cybersecurity and management capability, so that if one of those things starts misbehaving, you don't have to, you can be aware of it, number one, but then number two, you can isolate that one thing and not take down the whole network.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I guess a layered approach to security. So it starts with the end user client, and they may choose to put our system on like a virtual local area network, or they might choose to segregate networks. And then once you're trying to get in our system, then you've got to use things like the JSON web tokens, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing about the APIs, is typically you're making an API call as a third party, you're getting back a result. So if you're requesting data, if you're trying to send a command, but that's not real time, because let's say if you're a security system and you want to know immediately when there's a change in motion in a space, you don't want to have to query that all the time and find out, okay, now there's motion. Well, between querying, you might be waiting a minute. You don't want a minute to go by without you knowing that motion changed in that room. So we have something called Webhooks that notify you immediately when there's a change. That allows for this to be a near real-time system. And you're talking tens of milliseconds that all these things have to talk through APIs, so that it appears to an end user that, especially when you're talking about lighting control, that it's seamless, and someone presses a button, a sensor goes off, someone presses a button on an app, a mobile app, whatever the case is. You don't want that user experience to feel any different, and you want it to be as real time as possible. So it's spent a lot of time.
That real time information and that real time delivery. There's like, think of some of the other applications that we can do with that. So if let's say we want to do like security or integration with security systems, I would say that'd be a pretty good value, right?
Yeah, it's huge, especially, I like to think about buildings as logistical problems. And if you think about all the things that are going on logistics wise, people find conference rooms or a security event, whatever the case is, the more logistics is powered off real-time data. It's not retrospective data that you're going to look at the next day. And, in a lot of cases, it's not good enough to see it the next hour or the next minute. I mean, you really need to, if you're going to have data that is meaningful, and especially, let's say, security or health, the faster the feedback loop can be, the more meaningful and the more powerful the data becomes, that can actually act as a control mechanism for the environment itself or for the logistics that are happening within the building.
Cool. So when I hear, like, I talk a lot about living buildings or intelligent buildings. I hear you talk more about like agile buildings. Is that kind of the same definition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well, it depends on what you mean by living building, I guess. But yeah, I think in the sense that a building continues to evolve over time, and if that's part of being a living building, then that's what agile building is all about, because it's the idea that you can continue to iterate. You get feedback not only from the data that you accumulate, but from a lot of what we do in life, we're all humans. It's about feelings and emotions. So you get feedback from people as well, and from your customers in different ways. And based on all that, you can make slight iterative changes either through the software, because much of this is software defined. We have elevated as much of the logic to be software defined as possible, so that without a truck roll, you can make changes. And all of these sites have benefited from that, where we provide tier 2 support and that operational support remotely, and can be very effective at it and get that feedback and continue to evolve it over time. But not only from that aspect, but also imagine, every single light having a USB connection, having USB connections everywhere that you can also disable from a cybersecurity standpoint. But having that connectivity ability allows you to continue to iterate and evolve and be an agile environment as much as possible, because today there's a lot of new devices that are out, and it's pretty phenomenal. Gunshot sensors and different sensors for environments, disinfectant lighting, all sorts of stuff. But now fast forward next year or the year after, there's going to be twice as many devices. And so you're going to continue to want to be in a position as a business to leverage these new things that are coming out and make the most of them. And this platform allows you to do that. Cool.
So if we went back and we talked a little bit more about that, and we talk about the near real-time or real-time delivery of information, if you were to layer on something like real-time location services, is that something that we can support?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's something that we also have recently debuted, which very, very exciting. So we have a USB dongle that goes onto the node that can and receive Bluetooth data. So we can do this with other protocols as well. You just get a USB dongle that can talk that particular protocol, but Bluetooth being very ubiquitous, connect up and now tunnel that data through the platform. And we work with a company called Avani that crunches those numbers and provides real-time analytics of location data of those Bluetooth signals. And thereby, you can have someone with an ID badge that has a Bluetooth beacon on it, and these beacons can be very small. Or you can put them on assets, so things that you routinely want different people to be able to find, and one person puts an EKG in one place and then someone else needs to get to it, they need to find where that EKG is, you can bring that up. Or using them as virtual hall passes for schools. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with asset tracking, really. But in this kind of scenario with Music Tribe, one of the ways that they could have used it is being able to find different equipment that they routinely use when they're doing the recordings, or they have specialty equipment that they're using for different tasks. And then also just from a security standpoint, like you were just talking about, one of the things that we have patent is the ability to know if there's motion somewhere, then is there a Bluetooth tag in that area that should be there? And we call that authorized motion. And if they aren't supposed to be there, then that would be unauthorized motion. Or if there's no Bluetooth tag under that motion sensor, that would be unauthorized motion.
So this client, they're using co-host, right? And so co-host is allowing them to control thermostats, look at cameras, unlock and lock doors, control lighting, audio, video, and more. But what I think of is like, if I have my phone, then it's got a Bluetooth object in it. And then I have our nearby nodes that have Bluetooth or USB Bluetooth objects on it. Couldn't I facilitate automatic opening of doors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge thing right now. So I was on another conference recently where the question came up of touch points of shared surfaces. Imagine you're going from your garage to your workspace. How can you minimize the number of surfaces that you touch that would be shared by others for, obviously right now we're going through this whole COVID thing. So, and even beyond that, just normal flu and everything else, the more you can minimize those kind of situations, the better. So if you have a Bluetooth badge that then the Bluetooth transceivers above can recognize, hey, you're near a door that you have access to. Let's just open that door up, and you don't have to wait there and and do it yourself. So go a step beyond what traditional access control does now.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's go on to another project and see what other kind of cool stuff we're getting to do these days. All right, so this one's a really beautiful project in Costa Rica, and our partner there, United Tech, who represents Igor, and that's a picture of Andres there in the middle. And we worked with our partner, BC Networks, down that way to deploy this data center solution. So the client was looking to, one, deliver energy efficiencies for the site, and then to do so in a tech-oriented manner, right? So they wanted to show that they are a leader in technology, that they're differentiating, and then also do so in a very cost-effective means that saved them energy and money. So one of the things I really appreciated here was that the way that they mounted all the Igor nodes and the way they did the cabling really looks very well organized, and it's supporting some really differentiated suspended square type fixtures from the ceiling, and it's just a really nice looking environment. So they were able to max that energy savings. But in a data center, like if we're doing, let's say, Dwight, we're doing a large data center where it could be, I don't know, I might have to walk a mile in distance or 2 miles in distance to get back and forth as I walk around this facility. Is there other things that I mean, I think we talked about them previously, but I'd like to say, hey, how could we add some added value in a data center environment?
Yeah, so data centers are pretty unique environments, and there's lots of different aspects, from environmental conditioning to just making sure that people are safe. There's some really, and it depends on the data center, but some unique challenges. So for instance, data centers are typically very loud and you can't hear very well. And so using light to signal that maybe even a fire alarm is going off, for instance, those are the kind of things where if you can use light as a signal to identify something is going on when all your other senses are suppressed, then that can be a powerful thing. Being able to use, the environmental monitoring, even, the beautiful thing about our solution is it doesn't have to just be in the building envelope. We're having lots of conversations of integrating our technology into different, modular type environments, directly into the modules themselves, or let's say into what would be in a data center. What's your module? Well, it's a data rack. So integrating the technology into a data rack, being able to put sensors inside that data rack that matter to you, such as pressure, because there has to be, the airflow between the front and the exhaust of the data rack, and the temperature difference, the moisture and other factors that matter to you. There's a ton of valuable assets. Just think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets within just one rack.
Yeah.
So doing minimal sensory deployment within that rack, and then even access control, knowing, not only using Bluetooth to know if a person should have access, but then actually performing, with dry contacts and other things, knowing if someone did open up the rack. And then that one of the most powerful parts of the solution is that it all comes back to a centralized system that does data logging. So you get that audit trail of information that really provides the ability to look back and do, let's say, forensics or other investigation. In a high security data center, that is a very powerful thing, because data centers take security and access control extremely seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I can even think of like some more basic stuff where maybe it's just because you've got such a high density of sensors that are deployed on top of our infrastructure that we're just looking for variations in temperature from throughout the center, and then maybe that could be a sign of an early indicator of a problem that might be coming. And so just more data, more tools to run more efficiently. Can we go to the next one, Kim?
I would actually like to interject here.
Oh, cool.
That's a good segue. Orlando submitted a question, and he's asking about the cloud services. He's essentially, I think a little more clarity would help, because all this data requires the cloud. So he's asking, is the cloud hosted? Who is the cloud hosted by? Is it by Igor? Is this a service? Can we portal the data to another cloud or redirect the information?
Yes, great questions. So our cloud is developed on Microsoft Azure, and so it's hosted on Azure. It's our own cloud platform, and then it has its own APIs. So, and its own access control and users that can have different permissions and access. You can send invites to different people that have access to certain buildings and roles and permissions. Through that API, then you can also tie to other clouds or applications. And we're spending a lot of investment right now on our cloud to make, right now we get that data on about a 15-minute interval basis for most data. We're making that once again, so it's near real time. So by the end of the year, we'll be in that position. But we're really excited, not really prepared to tell you all the things that we're going to be debuting there, but we're making a major investment into that, into the cloud platform.
Great. All right. Thanks, Dwight.
So this one is Pinebridge out in New York City. And Eric Madison over there, he's just been fantastic to work with. This is an incredible showpiece. They have a few floors at downtown Manhattan. And like so many of those buildings, we've done quite a few buildings out in that area at this point. And it's just probably, one of the epicenters for POE for us. And we're talking about very high standards for building codes and a lot of different trades involved, and for coordination, every T crossed, I dotted. And so this is a real strong example of being able to meet some of the most stringent building codes in the world. And as they say, if you can do it in New York, you pretty much can do it anywhere. So some of the things that were just exemplary with this site are the types of fixtures. You can see just in this picture alone, there's recessed linears, there's pendants, there's larger lights that are suspended. Just having all these different kinds of fixtures and different ways in which the light can emit really was an important part for them. And then the APIs and allowing their integration to BACnet and their other controls was a strong reason for them to be able to, and all these different devices being individually addressable and having a lot of control were some really strong reasons for them to implement, as well as just, Eric, he comes from IT background. We're seeing more and more on these sites that we're engaging with that the IT group is highly engaged in the building in general. And so we're seeing a very significant acceleration of engagement with the IT groups. And you just see this in the world today, right? Where this digital transformation of business, it's extending into the envelope of buildings themselves, because the buildings are a place of doing business. So if you really want to get that full digital transformation of your business, extend it to every part of your enterprise, including your buildings. And so that's the way that they really saw this. So, Matt, do you see any other aspects of how they could extend this even further?
Yeah, sure. But before I go there, I did want to point out that I think, wasn't this one of the early implementations of the 90 watt per port project?
Yeah, really good point. I should have definitely mentioned that. So Cisco released a new 90 watt switch system, a network switching system. And the first implementation of that anywhere in the entire world was on this site. And then we also did the second implementation anywhere in the world of that switching platform. So that was a huge feather in our cap. We obviously worked very closely with Cisco, and very proud to have made this a success for both of us.
Yeah, and I like to point out there, when you leverage that new standard, that the key is to load up as many different object types as possible on a single home run or a single port. And when you do that, you cut down on labor, you cut down on materials, you cut down on ports, you cut down across the board. So I always encourage folks to look at that standard and look at leveraging that to its full capability to give your client the best value possible. So here though, Dwight, like this, this looks like a open workspace, open floor plan type concept. And as we go back to work, or we try to get more people to go back to work, so we're not just, always at the house. Is there technologies that we can deploy? Like, what is there any? I don't know. Is there any value to doing like space utilization or people counting and something like this?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So definitely with people counting, knowing, occupancy rates and occupant density is top of mind to everyone. Obviously the social distancing. So we have people counting sensors that we can also attach, and within a given space, you can know basically what's that density of people. And if you're in certain places like conference rooms, you're going to have a much lower maximum occupancy that is allowable. So having those sensors connecting to our platform, it does provide a huge amount of insight. We can create automations based on that, because that's just one more data point, and we can easily spin up different automations that, for instance, would flash a touch screen that would say, hey, you're overoccupied, or flash the lights to make you notice and take notice that you're overoccupied. So just behavioral change is going to become a major component of getting back to work, and just tapping people on the shoulder subtly, virtually, not through, flashing lights or whatever the case might be, just to remind them, hey, you do need to be aware you can't have this many people in this space. So we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest in these kind of solutions to either help make the environment safer, or to let people know you need to change your behavior slightly from what you've done in the past.
Awesome. Kim, can we go to the next one, please?
Yes, I do have a quick question that I think is relevant with this, since we're talking about the 90-watt installation. It's from James. He's asking, is an alternative strategy for a 90-watt port to reserve 15 watts for something not yet known?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about sensors is they don't consume much power. So you definitely get that benefit when you can reserve a few watts like that. You reserve 15 watts or so. Now you have a lot more to play with, and you can either attach, more interesting devices, or even possibly actuators. And that is definitely a smart strategy, if you ask me, because by making things as low cost as possible to iterate or add a sensor 2 years later, then you're going to be a lot more open and fully embrace this idea of being an agile building. And so, I'm a big proponent of setting aside, and usually, a daisy chain of devices, you're not going to use all of the power anyway, but getting 90 watt does allow for it to be easier to allocate, more that would be unused. And it just makes the install more economical, like Matt was talking about. You're going to get more devices per home run. You're not going to have as many home runs. You're not going to have as many, materials and labor to install those home runs, not as many network switches. So that saves a huge amount of energy or of cost.
And the final question I'm going to sneak in here before we move on to the next one is from Lester. He's asking, are you using Cisco plenum rated switches for the 90-watt lighting system? Do you find it more economical to keep the switches in the IDF than use the plenum rated switches?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It depends on the install as to whether they find it more economical or not. Sometimes on, let's say, retrofits, they find it more economical to put the switches in the plenum right next to where the new devices are being installed. But on these installs, typically what we're seeing is IDF, and those going back to the IDF. Security in particular has become a very important factor in that decision, as well as you asked about 90 watt switch in general. To my knowledge, Cisco doesn't have a 90 watt plenum mounted switch. Matt, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's still the CDB-8U. So that's the 8-port 60 watt or 40 watts total across all 8 ports, plenum rated switch. And I do, and I agree with Dwight. And it's a lot to do with personal preference or site specific challenges. So I tend to see more centralized designs for new construction, for your commercial environments, for your hospitals, but for things like multi-dwelling unit housing or hospitality, and even some senior living, we do see more of a distributed or that plenum design. So I think it'll evolve over time. I mean, the way I relate it back to other industries, it went from a centralized approach to a hub and spoke to a completely decentralized. So it's gonna evolve over time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this one is high school. It's actually a school that was built, I believe, in the 50s. Please forgive me, I got that wrong. And really, the school system was looking to increase safety and security, and to deliver consistent messaging, consistent communication during stressful, uncommon events, right? So an uncommon event might be a tornado. So if there's a tornado warning that's received, then that then tells numerous systems to react and respond accordingly. So some of those things are, for example, in the fixtures. So they retrofitted or added these in place to use lights as visible beacons. And during a tornado event, it's going to go to one color. When it's all clear, it's always green. Other things that they're doing is there's actually there's speakers throughout the school. There's also microphones throughout the school. They use these, if you look at the bottom left hand of your screen, there's monitors that then also, it's all coordinated. And so I'll use an example of another event. So on the same site, there's also gunshot detection systems. So the sequence of operation or the event for that is, if an active shooter is detected, basically it hears that frequency. First off, the gunshot detection system triangulates the exact location of the shooter. It notifies what type of bullet or gun was utilized. It then talks to a nearby camera. The nearby camera then shares its last 10 seconds of video and audio. And then that is then sent in near real time to persons that need to be in the know. So security, management or staff, local police department. Beyond that series of events, your video screens do things, your smart boards do things, your lights do things. Certain doors lock, other doors unlock. And so all these, and then finally there's a mass notification message that's sent out to, just like you've probably received one when there's like a child abduction alert, or if there's a tornado alert, same kind of thing, but for the school. And so that whole process was automated, so that the teachers and staff and students feel safer that way. And then one of the other cool ones that they did on this site was every classroom, everywhere, there's a camera. And so they actually implemented a panic button in every classroom that basically said, hey, if someone gets hurt or if there's a fight, that literally you go and press that button for 2 seconds, and then it pipes you over to the administrator's office, where they start watching the video and talking and coordinating with what's going on in the classroom. And so it's not only they have the better communication, but it's also been a deterrent for problems in the classroom. So it's very exciting to see this done, especially on such an older property, to have these upgrades. So I don't know, like some Dwight, there's probably some other cool stuff that they probably could have done since then. Are you hearing about any like specific sensors that might make sense for like a K through 12 application?
Yeah, so when you think about gunshot being for safety, and then there's a number of factors that really deal with productivity. And this is the case for not only schools, but for really any environment where people are trying to do something. But, whether it's CO2, it's the light level, it's noise, it's particulate count, ppm in the air. the temperature, those are the real factors that impact whether people are comfortable and distracted and being able to do whatever they're trying to do. So being able to monitor those environmental factors, I think, could play another part. And once again, because the system being real time when it's in its data, acting upon that, using it for controllability back to the air handling systems, being able to employ the thermostat, the virtual thermostat that we've created, would be a huge benefit here. And then being able to tie this data together through the API and provide information back to the digital signage, which we did here, and through the alarms and strobes and things like that. I think just a really powerful overall experience. I guess one of the, beyond just sensors, being able to tie in with the door controls. So with our node, you can connect a off-the-shelf, inexpensive strike plate, energized strike plate that would run $20, $15, $20, and just connect it up to a nearby node, and now you can have a door lock that you're controlling, versus what traditionally you'd have to have with a power over Ethernet door lock that might cost $1,500. You also have to do the install and a home run just to that device and a dedicated network port for that device. So it's going to cost $3,000 just for one door lock. So you can see a dramatic difference, 100 times less expensive for leveraging technology. Once again, that whole agile building becomes so powerful because you can just leverage what traditionally would just be used for lighting to now connect up a nearby device and get that added benefit to lock down the doors during a security event that may not just be for gunshot. It could be for a fight breaks out. We also can get ruckus, fight breaks out, get that notification and lock down and make people safer that way too.
What might we do to say, is little Timmy in class today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. So being able to use that Bluetooth data and
Timmy's a bad kid too. So just
okay. Well then, yeah, you really need to have him tracked, I guess. So if you have a Bluetooth badge for the kids and for everyone that's supposed to be in the school, which is important to know if they should be in the school, because I have a couple kids and we have to kind of go through this process of you go in and you have to be on the register before you even go into the second pair of doors there. But so if you have a badge and it's emitting Bluetooth that's unique to you, and now if little Timmy goes and he's in the class, it's registering, he's attending the class, he's there all class. And if he leaves, then you'd know that as well. And let's say he leaves his Bluetooth badge there and decides to leave the hallway and roam the halls, well, that's that concept of knowing, is this authorized or unauthorized motion? If you see motion and you don't see a badge or a badge that's not supposed to be there, then something's wrong. Or let's say little Timmy likes to go into unscheduled rooms, it's the science room that's not used that hour, and get together with some friends and do something. Well, we can see there's motion in that room and there's no Bluetooth identifier that is authorized to be there. So there's bathroom passes, they shouldn't be there. That's not authorizing you to be there. So if little Timmy was given a bathroom pass, for instance, he's supposed to either be in the hallway on the way to the bathroom or coming back from the bathroom or in the bathroom, and being able to do that kind of logistical rules, can really provide additional safety measures, making sure that people are where they should be.
Yeah, so you're taking like policies or rules and you're applying them across multiple object or sensor types to determine if something is happening correctly. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and we're just starting to get into those kind of use cases. But now that we have that indoor positioning information, it allows us to go there.
Cool. I guess we can scoot on to the next one.
Great. Can I sneak in a quick question? Chad is wondering about whether Igor is currently working with or has future plans to work with QSC, Q-SYS, Q systems, AV control systems to help write plugins. So AV control systems can pull the information and send controls to Igor to trigger actions.
Cool. Okay, that's a good one. So one, we are always trying to grow our ecosystem, right? And anyone that wants to write integrations, we welcome that, and we'd love to work with you. As far as other AV type integrations that's already been written, I'll give you an example. Crestron and RTI, right? They're an audio visual companies, and they trigger a lot of events. And so in particular, in a conference room application, Crestron is a popular brand used in commercial workspace and the conference room. And so one of our partners called T3 Automation, they wrote a plugin or driver that allows a Crestron C3 processor to connect to the Igor API and control those lighting objects. And so we're always open to having additional plugins or additional hooks created for other systems like that.
Yeah, this is another really strong aspect of our system. Like Matt said, we're doing what we need to foster a healthy ecosystem of partners in this regard. And we don't want to boil the ocean ourselves. We want to empower everyone around us to utilize this platform the best and most appropriate way for their end customers. So, APIs and webhooks, those are very powerful, but still you have to create a lot of code around it to integrate to it. So we went a step further and we created SDKs, a software development kit, that then you can just import into your code, and it allows you to connect up to our APIs more easily. But then we went even further, and then we created a plugin system where you can really just start creating single lines of code. You don't even have to create a formal program. You just create a line of code that might be something like, hey, when you get out of bed, I want, for any lights that are in the same space as my bed sensor, I want to turn them to 30% on to allow you to see, where you're walking in the middle of the night. And that really empowers you, because now as someone who's developing on the platform, you don't have to create an installer for, whatever an integration or anything like that. You can just load it in as a plugin. It very much minimizes the amount of code and simplifies and speeds your ability to commercialize something and bring it to market.
Cool.
Yeah, so this is a customer that was a very impressive site, a 5-story building, I believe, that is in California, that just it had a tremendous number of requirements. And actually, one of the most interesting things about the site is actually a competitor that had, and actually one of the other ones that we showed earlier, was a competitive system that was spec'd in, and they started installing it, and then they just really had a lot of problems and came to us and said, we really need help. So we ended up, as I like to say, throwing on our Superman cape and saving the day. And we made it happen. It was really an amazing opportunity to show how fast and nimble we can be because of our technology being so software defined. It allowed us to be able to use the same hardware in so many different use cases, even when the project was designed for a different kind of device. We were able to accommodate. They actually had the wires already pulled, for instance, so we had to be very flexible and accommodating. And in this particular site, there was so many different fixtures, fixture manufacturers, and then per fixture manufacturer, there were dozens of different SKUs that each one of them were employing. So this was a great example of how we are now able to connect to so many different kinds of devices, unlike many other systems where you'd have to have individual types of hardware SKUs to connect to different kinds of devices. We have the same SKU that would connect to all these different devices. And in addition, it's very software defined, so we can be very specific. It didn't require any change from these individual end devices. The lights could just be as they were. They didn't have to go through any modification themselves to allow us to connect to them. So the lighting, it's just a huge amount of diversity. And this was a really an example of aesthetics where they went to a pretty significant effort to make it so that the ceilings were clean and looked a very specific way, and there had to be minimal, unless it was on purpose, minimal sight of individual fixture lines or wires or anything like that. So there's the requirements pretty much on all these sites, but on this one in particular, it was very intense, and we were able to accommodate all their requirements.
Yeah, and I use this one as an example. A lot of times when I'm meeting with architects and lighting designers, even just 2 years ago, a common question was, well, I can't find all the lights that I want to utilize as POE. And so what we'll do is we'll show them some pictures of this site, give them examples of brands like Rich Brilliant Lighting that's on this job. And at that point, we're easily quickly able to move past that barrier and get those influencers on board. On this project, Dwight, was there any sort of like HVAC or BMS type integration required?
Yeah, so we did have a BACnet integration on this one. So we have that ability where on our API, we have a plugin that we've created that allows for our system to be controlled and queried from an HVAC system. We also, one of the things that they required, which is a big benefit now, is a change of value support within our BACnet stack. So they wanted to know if, occupancy changes or anything else in the system changes. They don't have to query the system with a lot of, that's obviously, BACnet can't really handle that many commands coming often. So by having the change of value, it really helped scale it to a large enterprise.
You know what I think is funny about it, and maybe I might be dead wrong here on BACnet, but it's like every job you sell and you do, there's the handoff through BACnet adds a lot of extra costs. I wonder if just sometimes it would just be easier if these other BMS providers would just write those plugins or write those integrations so that it would speed things along so much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sure would. It's, and BACnet, I think, has become the standard when it comes to building automation. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably just going to be the way that it is for the foreseeable future. And then security has their own, each one of these has a few in protocol types. So we just are going to, we're in the position we're unifying all of those different things onto one common platform. And in the IT world, and where you're going to see apps and integrations, and that's where really the end value is. The end devices are just a means to an end. That's where it's going to be standard on a RESTful interface with an API and webhooks, and that's really what matters at the end of the day.
Cool.
Yeah, this site also is an example of coordination. You can imagine when we fly in and in this kind of situation and take over a project and then, save the day, it's not just a technology feat, it's also a coordination and collaboration feat. A lot of different trades, a lot of, having to think through the design. What, if anything, can we modify and adjust? And then coordinating with all of the different suppliers, especially when you take our technology and you integrate it directly into fixtures, it takes a high degree of coordination with manufacturers. That is non-trivial. So one thing that, we spend a lot of time on is we're not just a commodity that is selling through a traditional distributor and we're just a widget that you just take and you use and you're done. But we're providing that end-to-end experience and support all the way from the design assist to the install, the project coordination, the commissioning, the handoff, post-install, and we'll work with partners that are on site and usually have a partner that's kind of our eyes and ears and our first tier reseller, but provide for tier one support. But it's the collaboration from a total life cycle perspective is really important to to account for and not to under appreciate, I guess.
All right, well, we are kind of running towards the end of our session together. I think we have time to maybe get an extra question or two in. Let's start with one from Chad. He submitted this a little bit earlier. He's asking if any of these projects have renewable energy sources, or at least that may have supported at least partially the lighting system, you know, solar, wind, and so on, and maybe a little commentary on what you're seeing in the market or what we could do in that instance.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what will happen. So we do have one site that we're working with, the Sinclair project, that they have a battery system and it's power over Ethernet. And so on the demand side of the equation, it's all DC. It's like a DC microgrid. They don't yet have power generation on site, but really that's the only thing that they don't have. But you see so often a focus on the supply side of power and being able to create the power generation on site, but really lacked the ability to go further than that. This solves that side of the equation where we can create that microgrid inside the building. So it just has to be paired with the source and supply, which is more readily available. So we haven't yet done an install like that, but there's nothing really stopping us.
Great, we've got a couple of questions that I'm just going to try and run through until time's up. James is asking a little bit more conceptually. So let's say if you have a fleet of buildings, so for example, 100 McDonald's, are there different types of value that these fleets need that Igor provides?
Well, and Matt can dovetail on this, but I think the fact that we have the cloud that allows you to see your portfolio of assets all in one place and to be able to do analytics and things in the cloud really provides a huge value and the means to manage all of those sites. And then also the cloud APIs, such that someone like McDonald's is going to have their own management platforms already. So for us to be able to just provide that data and stream it into what they already use and have one single pane of glass that they're already more than likely using is a real benefit. Matt, you probably have some ideas as well.
Water issues, either high water bills or water leaks. So with the single Igor platform, whether it be the control and the power of the lights, or detecting if someone left the back door open or the refrigeration open, or if the air conditioning is running properly, all that is now filtered through a single platform that then can, and again, with a client like that, they're going to have their own system or management system. So it's going to feed into that and communicate together. Then your smaller, more regional players, maybe like a 5-store or a 10-store guy form or she, and then they might just leverage our enterprise capabilities. So we have the capability to take all your sites and roll up all your devices from a single user instance in the cloud where you can manage, look at, and interact with all your devices.
I think what Matt said about, leveraging as many different kinds of devices on the same platform, you get such scale of economies that you can really save a lot of money by doing that.
I think this will be our final question. It's from James. How is after the sale satisfaction? Do we have examples of decision makers choosing Igor again and again?
Yes, we have repeat customers. One of the slides we showed you, they're actually under construction on their second prop. Actually, I think two, I know one of them is, I think two of them on there are definitely doing additional properties.
All right. And certainly, I think we're going to say that's it for today. Thank you everyone for your time. You're going to get a follow-up email, and I'm going to include some actual case studies and more of the write-ups of the projects we discussed today. So you can look at those in a little more detail. And I'll share all the questions with our speakers, and it'll certainly be something we might look to address in the future. So once again, thank you everyone. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you, Matt, for your time today. I hope everyone found it informative. And please stay in touch, sign up for a newsletter, follow us on social media so you always know when our next webinars are. And we hope to see you again soon.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.